Okay, everybody, we're going to call Tom Seaborn. He's a PhD in kinesiology and fitness, and I'm going to see what kind of health tip he's got for us today.
Tom Seaborn speaking.
Hey, Tom, this is Jeff Overturf with WTFradio.me. How you doing today?
Good. How are you doing, Jeff?
Oh, I'm doing great. Hey, listen, what kind of health tip do you have for our audience today?
Well, today I thought we'd talk about something that we skirted on last time that we didn't fully develop, and that is interval training versus steady state. You know how you see people like jogging on the treadmill for 45 minutes or walking outdoors for an hour? I mean, that's all well and good, but you've probably heard the great research that if you just speed up and slow down, then that's a lot more bang for your buck than just doing this long, slow distance training. When you do this interval training, what you're doing is you're training your fast twitch fibers like we talked about last time, the ones that are explosive, the type 2B, the fibers that we need especially as we grow old. And also it trains both your anaerobic and aerobic cardiovascular system. And what that means is that it's a lot better than just doing steady state for your cardiovascular system because your heart has to pump harder and it will work harder, and in doing so, it gets you fitter faster. So if, let's say, a person only has 20 minutes to work out, maybe a 3 to 5 minute warm-up, and then maybe just 15 seconds of hardcore effort, and then 45 seconds of recovery, and then do another 15 seconds of effort, and then 45, just doing those type of cycles can get you a lot more for your workout than just doing 20 minutes at a very slow pace.
Well, give me an example of it. If we're, like going around a lake, I mean, how long, as far as, like if somebody is running or jogging, and give me an example on length of run, jog, and how they should mix it up.
Yeah, similarly to what I just said would be a great way to start, where a lot of the research shows a 1-to-3 ratio, meaning like 15 seconds effort and then 45 seconds recovery. And that would be a 1-minute cycle, which is kind of easy to keep track of. So let's say you had your watch and you just sprinted for 15 seconds and then you jogged or walked for 45 seconds. And then your second cycle, you'd sprint again for 15 and then recover for 45. And if you did 10 cycles of that, then that's a heck of a lot better than doing just 10 minutes at a kind of a relatively moderate pace of, long, slow distance.
I think I think the 10 miles on a walk run, that would be somewhere about a half a mile, right?
Well, you mean 10 minutes, you mean?
Yeah, if somebody did 10 minutes of the cycle that you just said, that would be roughly a half a mile?
Yeah, it depends. It depends on how fast they are. Yeah, I mean, if you got a world-class sprinter, they're doing a lot better than we are. But
right.
Sure, yeah. I mean, so yeah, you measure it by distance. But what I prefer to do with my students is have them measure it by time. So that, like, maybe next week they'll do the 10-minute cycle. In other words, it's always good to warm up for like 5 minutes and then do your 10-minute interval training cycle and then do your 5-minute cool down. So that's less than a 30-minute workout. And then the week after that, maybe add a couple of cycles to that, which in our case of what we're just discussing, it's just adding 2 minutes. So if you add 2 minutes a week to your existing program, you start off with 10 minutes of the effortful workout, and then the next week it's 12 minutes, and the week after that it's 14 minutes. And that way you'll progress safely so you won't get injured.
Okay, now let's use another example. If we were on a bicycle, and I know everybody does that on a bike, how would you suggest that we do it on a bicycle? Say we're going to be riding 10 miles.
Yeah, the great thing about the bike, like we discussed last time, is that sometimes the intervals are already set up according to your wind and according to the terrain. Like if you have hills, you don't have to worry about it because hills will take care of your intervals.
Right.
Now, if you have a steady headwind, then that's going to keep you probably at a steady state because you'll find a gear that's not going to have you cross that anaerobic threshold. So what you could do with the bike is exactly what we did with the run, where it's 15 seconds of effort, where you're in a pretty heavy, hard charging gear where you're huffing and puffing and burning, and then you recover for 45 seconds and then keep attacking it so that each minute is a cycle, just like we did with the running.
I have a question for you. I was on a track stand a couple of weeks ago, and I did exactly what you were just talking about, and I got to 50.7 miles an hour and then to 50.3 miles an hour and then 49.7 miles an hour. Now,
yeah,
that's on a track stand, and, you
Yeah.
know, gravity's not an issue and everything else. For my age, is that good? Because I was like ecstatic. I'll just whip 50 miles an hour.
Yeah, like you just said, it doesn't translate to outdoors where there's
No.
no wind resistance or resistance against the road, the
Right.
ride. But
Right.
it's fun for the ego to see those numbers come across the screen. But the reality, you look at a guy like Lance Armstrong or any of these other guys, professional cyclists, they can't even ride that fast unless they're barreling down a hill. So
Right. I know that. I know what you're saying about the road, but I'm talking about on a track stand. Is that like, can anybody do that?
Yeah, I mean, well, you know what's interesting about what you're saying. I teach a spinning class here at the college, and I have the students occasionally come in who don't realize their anaerobic potential, meaning what they do at the Olympic Training Center to see if someone could become a professional or a world-class amateur cyclist is test their wattage, their power on a bike. And, occasionally I have these kids come in that don't realize they have huge genetic potential. So, yeah, I mean, this is a measure of your power output, but there's so many other factors, as you know. I mean, it's like, let's say, for example, how much do you weigh?
That's a secret.
Okay. And the only reason I brought that up
is between
power.
it's between 260 and 240, depending on how many Dr. Peppers I've had that week.
Okay. And the reason you don't see any cyclists that are professional in the 200 range is that they have the power to weight ratio, that
Right.
in order to carry that weight up a hill, they have to have power, and so the less weight, the better. So these guys are razor thin by the time they do the tour or some of their major
Right.
races, but they maintain that power.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, that's what we discussed last time. It's one of the greatest sports in the world, cycling, because number one, it's non-impact. You can do it for the rest of your life. It trains both your anaerobic and aerobic power. So it's a great sport, especially as we get older, because our joints kind of gravitate toward moves like cycling, where it's not going to be a pounding type of impact.
Yeah, I know. Running is rough.
Exactly.
Okay, well, listen, I appreciate your tips today, Tom. You've always been a great help, and we're going to get back to you next week, and we're going to do another segment. Have you enjoyed doing this?
Yeah, it's great. We'll keep it going.
All right, man. Sounds great. Thanks a lot, Tom.
Thanks, Jeff. Bye-bye.